imagine it was probably a lonely existence anyway.
Yeah.
And even Winston Churchill, who was really no friend of Nazis, once said that he felt that the treatment of Hess was really overly harsh, especially considering that he had come to Scotland in good faith to try to broker a peace.
Mm-hmm.
But and there was the other three powers had talked about releasing him and said they would be willing to do so, but the Soviets always vetoed it. And it's because, again, they just didn't like him that
I'm
much.
guessing it required a majority vote.
Yeah.
Or it required a unanimous vote, I should say.
A unanimous vote, yeah. And so anyway, that's pretty much the end of it. He died in 1987 by hanging. He hung himself. Although, again, that's a mystery. So, but our mystery right now is, did he go of his own volition, or did Hitler order him to go on his peace mission?
To the peace mission, yeah.
And there's still some debate about that. I mean, generally the historians agree that he just wanted his own, and that Hitler was really upset about it. But there's some evidence that maybe he didn't just decide to go on his own, or maybe it was his idea and Hitler signed off on it. Maybe Hitler ordered him to do it. The other thing is, what made them think that this was a good idea?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really.
Yeah.
So there are.
So we're going to tackle that first, and then we'll tackle the death.
We'll tackle the mystery of the suicide or murder.
Second.
Yeah,
okay.
Second. Well, he wanted his own, and after all, this is what Hess always said, and that's what Hitler said. And Hitler supposedly did get very furious when he heard about this flight. Doesn't sound like some guy who knew in advance. And plus, the night that Hess landed in Scotland, the Luftwaffe bombed London very heavily. Not really something you're going to do if you're trying to put forward, peace feelers.
Well, okay, so I'll play devil's advocate on that. That's a great way to distract from your secret peace emissary coming to the country.
That's true too. Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to assume that the RAF is going to be kind of tied up with that,
They're going to be
and
really
not so
busy.
interested in this one bogey over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's one theory. The other theory is that he went with Hitler's permission. And actually, I read an article that was written, I think in 1943 or 40. I can't remember when, and I forgot the magazine it was published in. But according to this theory,
is this the one that was in 3 parts?
Yeah.
I mean, the article was all continuous in the format we looked at, but it was broken into 3 parts.
Yeah.
This was. I found this one a bit outlandish.
Yeah, I don't know how supported that stuff was, but essentially the idea is that he had to have had Hitler's sign off on the whole thing, because otherwise, what's the point? You can talk about making all the concessions he wants, but if Hitler doesn't want to do that, well, you're not going to get very far. There was an article about this. Well, did you want to say something?
No, I was just agreeing with that. I mean, that does stick out to me as it's not as though this is one of those situations where Hess would come back and say, listen, the Brits are being really reasonable. You're going to kind of look like an idiot if you don't accept it. Hitler, it would have been really easy for Hitler to say, no, I don't want to do any of that. Thanks. Mm-hmm. Versus going with some of, knowing what Hitler is willing to give. That makes for a much more powerful situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think that it increases your odds of success. Because frankly,
Although I guess there is something to be said for, if he was close enough to Hitler, it wouldn't be very hard for him to say, so what's the deal breaker for you?
Yeah. What's important to you to keep, and what are you willing to give up?
Yeah.
He could have
just in casual conversation over the year that he was planning his trip, right?
Yeah, he could have done that. Yeah.
My whole thing with Hitler had to know, because Hess is quoted as saying Hitler is the party and the party is Hitler, and other statements that equated to him believing that the Fuhrer was God. That he was so powerful and he had to be followed, that I just can't see him suddenly turning away and doing something without the permission
of his
leader.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to be trampling all over this, because I know we have more information in this theory, but he didn't see it as treason, right? He saw it as a favor. He saw it like it was a surprise party for Hitler.
Yeah,
but his personality never supported it. They called him the brown mouse, meaning he was meek and mild, and he was only brown because he was wearing the brown shirt.
Yeah,
he didn't have any initiative. That's why for the 3 years prior, everybody else had been, jockeying for position, and he slowly got pushed out, and he was given a made-up honorific title.
Yeah,
the guy had no gumption of his own.
Yeah, no, he was definitely not a hard a hard ass like say Hitler or Goring or those people. Not
Yeah,
at all.
no,
Yeah.
he wanted to serve the Fuhrer.
Yeah.
He wanted to serve the cause.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the impression that I
Right,
always
but I
got.
guess my counter to that is he thought he was.
And
you know, but
he
I
could have
do-
been completely misdirected. I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
And I totally hear what you're saying. This is one of those amicable moments. I totally hear what you're saying that, you know, but he wouldn't have taken that initiative.
His character didn't show this to me.
Right.
Yeah, but it is possible that he went there entirely on his own, and he was just kind of delusional and actually thought he was going to succeed. But back to the Hitler thing, where Hitler had there is some evidence that Hitler did know well in advance. Rudolf Hess's son Wolf Hess. Yeah, I know. Wrote a long article about this a while back. Yeah,
I'm going to
I know.
name my
Wolf.
first child Wolf.
I know, it's a cool name.
With your last name? No, I wouldn't do it.
Well, she'll have a different last name.
Nope.
We're going to make it up.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, anyway, yeah, it's Wolf Sideways.
Yeah.
That'd be a good name for your
It's
kid.
hard. Wolf Sideways. That's a hard. Sideways is a hard name to plan for. It's true.
Yeah. Back to Wolf's evidence. Okay, he says that Hitler and Hess met for 4 hours on May 10th, just a few hours before he left to fly to Scotland. And Hess, as we've said, was pretty much sidelined in Germany by now, and he really wasn't involved with the war effort or with foreign affairs. And so I'm finding it hard to believe Hitler would have carved out 4 hours for him if it didn't actually involve the war or foreign affairs.
Oh, I can totally tell you what they were doing.
What is
They were
that?
watching the latest Michael Bay Transformers movie, because
That's
those
it.
are 4 hours long.
Oh, that's a good point. Or
Watching
maybe
Lord of the Rings.
They were watching The Hobbit.
Yeah, that's an easy 4-hour time commitment.
No,
Hitler
wait.
needed some time off.
No, wait. This was the 1940s.
Oh, they didn't have that yet?
No.
No, damn it. Crap. Yeah, I think it was right around this time that Tolkien was writing Lord of the Rings, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty close.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, back to.
So Hess was involved with foreign affairs in the war.
No, he wasn't.
Oh.
He wasn't. He was involved with more domestic stuff.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it.
Yeah, why would Hitler take the time unless it wasn't one of those things?
God.
Yeah, I mean, he's
it.
busy planning Operation Barbarossa and you know, the bombing of London and everything else.
And we're saying Hitler didn't have any kind of love for friends.
Oh no. I mean, he did, I'm sure, but I don't know that he would have had 4 hours to spend with Hess, just hanging out when there was so much
catch
going
up.
on.
He's got a lot of work to do, a lot of politicking to do.
Yeah.
You take 20 minutes and you hang out with your buddy and you have a drink. You don't take 4 hours.
Yeah.
I get where that's what this
Yeah.
is coming from.
Yeah.
Again, I
so
see both sides.
This
on that.
doesn't prove anything, but
No.
it's interesting, and it's the next thing is, as you mentioned, as we mentioned earlier, Karl-Heinz Pinch, the adjutant who delivered the letter to
Yeah.
Hitler, who was captured. They an historian came across what's his name, Matthias O, discovered this document in the Russian state archives, written by Pinch. It was handwritten, and according to what he said about the encounter with Hitler, Pinch said that, quote, Hitler calmly listened to my report and dismissed me without comment, unquote. Yeah, Pinch said that Hitler had known about the flight plan for a long time. And so that's
that
what
was
he wrote.
the impression that he had.
Yeah.
So where did the mad as hell story come from?
You know, I'm thinking that might have been cooked up to reassure the Japanese and the Italians that Hitler wasn't trying to stab them in the back by making peace with Britain.
Okay.
And I think that's why Hess was loyal to the end and always said all along that it was his idea.
Well, his family also never got any kind of retribution from the Nazi Party. They never went after him.
That's the other thing is that a lot of people surrounding Hess, even like his astrologer, you know, and all those people, in fact, all kinds of astrologers were rounded up and arrested.
Because Hess was really into that stuff.
He was into astrology and all that stuff.
Well,
yeah.
who isn't? Let's be fair.
Yeah, I know.
I know. I'm reading my signs all the time.
Yeah, so all kinds of people suffered retaliation except for Hess's family. Actually, Hitler personally intervened to make sure that nothing happened to them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard. Again, you know, it's hard if you're really good friends with somebody, you don't necessarily want to see their wife and kids hurt just because he made a bad choice, but I don't know that Hitler necessarily strikes me as that kind of guy.
Yeah.
No. Again, his character didn't reflect that kind of behavior that we know of.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. It could be that just, you know, pastimes and all that. You know, I'm gonna look after his family. It might just be that he. So, So none of this definitively proves anything, although
But it is
Pinch's
suspicious.
document is pretty interesting.
Well, it
They
came
were-
out in they printed that Der Spiegel.
Yeah, that came out in 2011 in an article in Der Spiegel. Yeah,
We've
yeah.
talked about that magazine.
We
before,
have.
haven't
Yeah,
we?
Der
Yeah, we
Spiegel.
have.
Okay,
Yeah.
I knew we.
So it's like what, his journal or something that they found?
I think it was more on the lines of a confession to the Russians.
okay.
yeah.
It was they. So the Russians used to like to make people write these long confessions denouncing everything.
Yeah, but so
And-
that's my problem with it.
Well, but that's it because if you ever read any of them, they're always crazy long.
Yeah.
And they always have a very set style and certain verbiage in them. And I believe this falls right into that category.
Yeah, it's almost as if they told the guy what to write.
Yep.
You know, they might have.
Well,
It doesn't
if
mean
it's the
that
same
nothing-
set of interrogators using the same book.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that everything in there was a lie, but you know.
But you base it on the truth.
Yeah. Anyway, after the war, some other people talked about various things, and there were two other high-ranking Nazi Party members hanging with Hitler at that time when he received the letter in the news that Hess had left to go to Scotland, and they said that Hitler wasn't angry at all. Hitler's valet said after the war that Hitler's behavior at the time indicated to him that he must have known in advance. He too said Hitler wasn't upset at all.
Who did he
And-
say that to?
That was his valet. He actually,
No, but who did the valet say it to?
I don't if it was a reporter or who he said it to. All I read is he said that after the war. The valet did say he was actually afraid to ask Hitler if he had known ahead of time.
Understandably.
So he didn't ask him. But he said his behavior just indicated to him that Hitler was not mad.
So here's my other problem with this theory in particular that Hitler knew is I started to talk about this earlier is the concessions of peace that he was supposedly willing to give.
Yeah.
Germany had just spent the last 2 years marching south through is it Norway and then into France, and they would have kept going.
Norway is kind of north.
No, not Norway. What's the other one just north of France? I can't.
Belgium.
Thank you,
Netherlands?
Netherlands
Yeah.
and Belgium. That's where I got the end. But they had spent 2 years working their way south through all of that, and they would have kept going into Spain if Franco hadn't been just jerking them around the whole time and saying yes, no games. But my point is, if they've just spent all that time and effort to secure it, they've wiped out the local governments, they've installed all their own people, why would they then suddenly say, we'll just leave? It's cool. You can have it back. We just wanted to check the place out. That doesn't make any sense from a wartime perspective to me.
I don't know that they expected to occupy all of France forever. They did intend to keep Alsace and Lorraine, but they were going to withdraw from the rest of it. So they didn't really need to be running France. I mean, they could have, if they had their chunk of Poland and other parts of Eastern Europe, that was all they really needed.
Well, but they also, what they would do though is like in France, they moved in and they put in their own people, and then eventually when they took over all of France, it's the Vichy government.
Yeah, the Vichy government.
The Vichy government, those guys were technically still running the country, but they knew that they had to keep the Germans happy, and the Germans did this. They were like, you can live and do what we say, or we can kill you and put our own people in, which is way easier.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. So why would they do all of that, though?
No, it might be that some of this stuff was misreported. It might have been basically, we're not going to withdraw from Western Europe, but we will leave you alone. We'll buy your munitions supply, for the sake of your economy, and we'll leave your overseas possessions alone, and so that might have been all the concessions they actually planned to make.
I mean, you don't plan for the peace to happen, right? You install your government and you say, okay, we're good here, but you know how valuable this is to us, and we are so committed to peace that we are willing to give you this thing that obviously we fought a lot for. So you understand how much we're willing to give up for peace. They say no, you've got your thing, you're covered, it's fine, you still have your country there that you've taken over. If they say yes, great. You've got this huge piece of leverage to say, great, you're going to give us pretty much the rest of Europe.
Yeah, it's just their sunk cost for what they did was so large It's just so much.
Actually,
it's such a thing to walk away from.
They didn't really expend huge resources taking over France. It was actually a pretty quick thing.
Well, but then they spent a bunch of money, bombing Britain and then defending France. I mean, a lot of munitions, and maybe what I'm responding to is more what happened after that for everything that took place. But it just seems like it was such a big friggin' investment.
I don't think I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, in my mind, strategically, it makes a lot more sense to be willing to give up something that appears to be very valuable to you that you may or may not actually care about in order to be able to leverage that to get you more things that you actually do care about in the future.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that could be. I don't know.
Maybe it makes me a horrible person versus you.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know.
No, that means I'm the guy who will never back down. Nope, I made it here. You can't come in.
That's right.
And I'm the one who will be like, oh yeah, it totally looks like I care about this jewelry.
Yeah.
You can have it, but I'm going to take your first child.
Devin, for everybody who doesn't know, just made the creepiest big eye face at me. I'm never having children now.
Now.
I'm kind of leaning towards Hitler knew.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think so.
Are there any other choices? Is it just the two?
Kind of those two. That's the question that everybody's been wondering for all these decades, and it really is an historical kind of mystery. And then, of course, my other question is how could they have thought this was going to work? How could they have thought this was going to be a good idea? And that's what gets us to the whole MI6 angle.
Oh, I thought it was because Hitler was a vegetarian.
There might have been that too. Yeah, Hess was a vegetarian also. He was like really new agey and all that. The Nazis were all new agey.
Eggplants are bad for you.
Yeah,
don't eat them. See what happens?
Yeah, but the theory about MI6 is that Hitler and the Germans were putting out some feelers towards influential Britishers in the early 1941 regarding peace negotiations. And of course there was the Anglo-German Friendship Society or whatever that was called.
Yeah, great name.
Yeah.
It rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah, and so this was like aristocracy to aristocracy, talking back and forth. And Germany eventually proposed a meeting on neutral ground, and that was rejected by the British, as the story goes. And so they finally offered to send a delegate to England. And they proposed a guy named Ernst Wilhelm Boll as the delegate, and there was no response from England about this. Yeah.
I'm guessing that's because they were busy dealing with the Luftwaffe?
Yeah, that's probably it. But they were doing a good job of playing it hard to get. Eventually, they were getting kind of nervous about this because this was actually kind of important to Hitler, I think, to actually not have that second front with Britain when he went after the Russians. So Hitler came up with the idea of sending a really big Nazi to England, somebody with a lot of stature, somebody who's close to Hitler, who could credibly speak for Hitler. And who else would that be? Rudolf Hess. I mean, he wasn't really important to the war effort.
And he was highly expendable.
Yeah.
Actually, all things considered.
He was kind of, yeah.
Obviously, the war continued on without him, without a hitch.
Quite well, yeah.
For a number of years, at least.
Actually, Hess was...
some hitches.
Yeah. Hess was not really violent. I don't think he was really into the whole war thing.
No, he was just supporting the cause.
Yeah, I know. But, well, the Germany, in a sense, had a good reason to feel some grievance after the way they've been treated after World War I. I'm not saying they were justified in anything.
No, but I understand why there was a lot of angry Germans after World War I.
Oh, yeah. Definitely, yeah. What actually was happening is apparently, so the theory goes, and there is a little evidence to support this. We're not going to find out for a little while, but they were actually negotiating with the British Secret Service and not members of the royal family or the British aristocracy like they thought they were.
So it was a game.
It was a ruse. It was a setup, yeah. It sounds like they just wanted to get their hands on a high-ranking Nazi and just interrogate the heck out of him, which is probably what they did.
Yeah.
The only qualm with that I have with this, and it stems back to that Friendship Society. The things that I have read are that as soon as war broke out, the Friendship Society was dissolved.
That's what I heard too. Yeah.
We're not friends anymore. You blew up my house and stuff. So no, we're not friends.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I mean, obviously you're not going to be overt, but there was still contacts between the British aristocracy and the German aristocracy.
Yeah, if you have a personal friendship with somebody and they're saying, "Dude, I'm sorry that my Fuhrer blew your house up," they're not going to be like, "Yeah, I know you ordered the bombs." You're going to say, "Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry. blah, blah. But also it's underground. You know, it's very easy to, even if it had been totally dissolved, it'd be very easy for a member of MI6 to say, oh, no, I'm part of this thing. I know that you think that we're dissolved, but just kidding, we're still underground, so...
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about the clandestine side of the society still existing.
So that's why you need to meet us in Scotland, not, at Scotland Yard or London proper or, anything like that.
And don't follow the Luftwaffe into town.
Seriously.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. Let's go talk about this. So anyway, do you guys have any favorite theories there?
I think we've all agreed.
Hitler knew, Hitler didn't know.
Hitler knew.
They were tricked
Hitler
by
had to
MI6. I'm thinking he did.
I know that Hess just stood by that he did it independently, but I can't buy it.
Yeah, I think Hitler knew, but I also do give some credence. It wouldn't surprise me to find out that MI6 had something to do with it too.
No, the Brits pulled off a lot of ingenious plans.
They really
this would have been a good one.
They did some amazing stuff. In fact, there was another one that I stumbled across. I won't mention it now. In the course of my research of this, that's another interesting little mystery. We'll talk about that later.
Oh yeah, no, they were really crafty.
They were very good. Oh yeah.
Well, when your back's against the wall, you do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
No, they did a great job of turning all those German agents against against Germany too. They totally controlled their entire network in England.
I also think that part of it though is that, like I was saying before, is that the one thing I like about the Germans is it's this, and we're going to here, and how could you think it would be anything else? And the Brits are like, nobody else thinks that way, dude, but we'll totally use it against you. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the Germans in World War II actually did not practice good tradecraft when they were spying. Not at all. Yeah. Oh, anyway, so I'm thinking that they wouldn't have done it unless they received encouragement from Britain, and that, I think, probably came from MI6. It might have come from, say, members of the aristocracy, but I think it probably came from MI6.
Possible.
Yeah. Well, let's get on to our other mystery, which is how he died. He died in August 1987 in Spandau Prison. Cause of death was suicide by asphyxiation. The prison had a garden. It had like a courtyard in the middle of the garden, and it had a small summer house that Hess used as a reading room.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's nice to think, right? You kind of think, well, he was in jail for a really, really long time, and he just had to sit in his cell the whole time, but I guess there was this whole entire complex that he was the only one in.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know that they gave him a little place where he could read and stuff.
I think as the years went by, they got more relaxed. Mm-hmm. At first it was very, very stern, very regimented. You could only be visited for like 30 minutes a month by anybody. And of course, guards had to be present, and he couldn't talk about a whole laundry list of topics. And that eventually got relaxed somewhat.
You would assume.
Yeah. But anyway, back to his death, he took an electrical extension cord and wrapped one end around a window latch in the summer house and then the other around his neck, and he hung himself.
That doesn't sound pleasant or easy.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. He was 93 years old. He lived to be a ripe old age.
That is exactly where the conspiracy comes from. Why does a man at the age of 93 suddenly decide that he's got to take his own life?
I don't know if he suddenly
I understand it. I totally get this, and I don't think that this is a conspiracy in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. But I know that's where it comes from. Wait, he was super old. Why would he do that at this point?
Yeah. Well, he did that. There was one thing going on. His lawyer and his family had been campaigning for a long time for him to get released because everybody else had been released. I mean, and several of them actually had life sentences and they were released early. Hess, for everything he did do some bad things, but he wasn't nearly as monstrous as some of those other guys were.
Especially seeing as how he was out of the war for 4 years. He couldn't have been involved in all of that other stuff.
Oh, yeah. But the thing about it is that every time the issue came up, the Soviets, as I said previously, always vetoed the idea. They might have still been mad about Barbarossa, and maybe they figured Hess was part of the planning of that. I'm not sure that he was. Probably not. I mean, I know he was aware of it. But
awareness is not responsibility.
Yeah, but the thing about the Soviets, too, is the Russians are still mad at us over World War II. They really are. I mean, we let them bleed for years before we finally did something about it. And I think that some of them, at least, don't really like us.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not totally surprised that the Soviets had a grudge against him. But also Spandau was located in West Berlin, which gave the Soviets a really nice opportunity to send spies in for a look-see. Some of those guards maybe weren't just straight-up guards. Yeah, it's kind of a shame to keep one guy locked up. Well, West Berlin, and they wanted to actually be able to go in and look around and gather intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to send your personnel to Spandau.
In the commute from the border to the prison, they could take a diversion and look around? Is that what you're getting at?
Look around, maybe pick up stuff from spies, from dead drops, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you said that, I took it as something at the prison, which didn't make sense, but that makes a whole lot more sense. I get it now.
Yeah. So it could have been totally just for espionage, and it's kind of a shame to keep this one guy locked up for 21 extra years. But
he was a tool at that point.
And so that might be one of the reasons why they kept insisting that he not be released. But things began to change in 1987. Mikhail Gorbachev was in power. Relations were thawing out a little bit between the East and the West. And the Soviets began to express a bit more, receptivity to the idea of letting Hess go. And there was a report published, again in Der Spiegel, in April 1987 that said Gorbachev was now taking the view that releasing Hess would be seen worldwide as a, quote, gesture of humanity, unquote. Now, I'm sure that remark was read by everybody in the British, French, and American intelligence services. And some people believe this might have set off alarm bells in the British Secret Service. Yeah.
Why?
Why? Well, we'll get to that in a sec.
Okay.
But from Hess's point of view, if Russia is finally going to agree to let you go, he might have actually been just a few weeks or months from freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he didn't have a hell of a lot longer to live, if you've been locked up all those years, wouldn't getting out at least and being free to look around and take in the world and all that stuff, wouldn't that be a worthwhile thing?
Do you think he knew, though?
What, that he was going to get out?
That it was possible that he was going to get out? Or, would that necessarily have been communicated to him? Is there any proof that it was communicated to him?
He did get to read the papers and stuff, but I don't know if the stuff that was about him they did censor
They probably censored the hell out of that paper.
Yeah, so he might not have found out, but he was, by this time, for years, he didn't have any visits from his family.
Mm-hmm.
But he started having regular visits from his family, so I'm guessing that sometime...
you think it's reasonable to assume that he did know?
Yeah, I think that sometime between April and August, he probably had at least one visit from his lawyer and his family. And they probably said something like, hey, good news, he might be getting out.
Okay. And even a month of freedom after 40 years of prison would be the best month ever, even if all you could do was get pushed around in a wheelchair by your family. At least you're with your family and not in that frickin' prison anymore.
Yeah. Don't you think?
I don't know.
You think there's the fear of being released? Because that's
being released, there's a bit of the fear of perception, not knowing how people will react to you, to going home to a place where people think that you are a traitor.
You're a monster.
That you're a monster, being labeled as a Nazi who, committed crimes against humanity, whether you were convicted of that or not. I mean, I think there's a lot of things. I guess it's possible. I guess this would be for the he committed suicide argument, that not only is there the he lost the will to live, it's also, it does coincide with the fact that he might have the possibility of getting out, and that could be a really, really scary thing to him. He could have just decided, no. I don't want to go. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And there's no way to keep yourself, right? You can't just be like, I'm just going to stay in jail. Thanks, though.
I'm going to hold on to the bars and you can't drag me out.
Yeah, you can't say that.
Because that works so well for not going in.
So that, I guess that could have been a thing.
No, it is possible. I mean, people do lose the will to live, and especially he was pretty feeble by this time. Maybe he just decided to and he had committed or attempted suicide in the past.
When he was younger.
Yeah, and so maybe he just felt like, even if I get out now, what kind of a life am I going to have? I can barely even walk,
Because he was very, very frail at that point.
Oh, yeah,
he
was
would
very
be,
weak.
right?
Yeah.
And I think there is something to be said for saying he doesn't know what he's coming to, He probably thinks he's labeled as a traitor. He's going to have a villain's welcome. Nobody's gonna love him. He's gonna be hated. I mean, I agree. Probably that wouldn't be the reception. Probably somebody would say, "Oh, look, an old man," right? They wouldn't say, "Oh, that's Rudolf Hess. He's the one who blah 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 blah," because there also really wasn't very much love for the Nazi Party at that point in Germany.
No,
but I don't know. I guess.
Well, there were a lot of.
I can understand. That fear.
There's that. I think that the positives outweighed the negatives. It's also possible maybe he didn't know because the family wasn't necessarily allowed to talk about just anything with him.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, there were definitely restrictions. Well, back to the murder theory though. Wolf Hess was mentioned before.
His son.
His son, who Devin is going to name her child for.
Yep.
Yeah, he laid out some reasons for suspicion. Number one, he did say at his last visit with his father that Hess was so weak and frail that he couldn't walk without a cane on one side and a guard on the other side supporting him. So how could he have managed to actually hang himself?
I mean, I guess it's you step off a thing.
Yeah,
that sounds morbid and horrible. But
I know, but I've had I thought about the same thing. Is that
it doesn't
you
take a lot of
sit there
power.
and you toss the cord till it gets up there, and you tie a knot, and you just pull it down, and then you tie a thing, and you. I mean, it's completely possible to do with very little effort.
Yeah. Oh no, it's
not as if he climbed a 10-foot